Late night delivery. A few years ago, I moved into a small house on the outskirts of Sacramento, California. After spending several years living in busy downtown apartments, I wanted a place that offered more privacy and quiet. This new neighborhood was peaceful, with tidy houses and wide streets lined with tall trees, far from the city noise I had grown accustomed to. I quickly settled into a comfortable routine, enjoying the tranquility and security the neighborhood seemed to provide. My home was modest but cozy, a single-story bungalow with a fenced backyard and enough privacy to make me feel at ease. My work schedule was demanding, often requiring long hours and late nights. Because of this, cooking wasn't always practical, and I frequently found myself ordering takeout, especially during evenings when exhaustion outweighed my desire to cook. On one particular night in October, after a lengthy day at work, I returned home feeling unusually tired. The clock had just passed 10 p.m., and I hadn't eaten anything substantial all day. Deciding that cooking was out of the question, I grabbed my phone and ordered Chinese food from a familiar local restaurant I often relied on. It was reliable, fast, and always open late. I finished placing my order. The confirmation showed an estimated delivery time of around 30 minutes. While I waited, I busied myself tidying up the kitchen and preparing for a quiet evening of rest. About 25 minutes later, the soft chime of my doorbell echoed through the quiet house. Surprised by the early arrival, I approached the front door cautiously, an instinct I developed after years of living alone. Before unlocking the door, I glanced through the small peephole, a habit I practiced religiously. Standing just outside my front door was a young man in his mid-20s. He wore ordinary clothing, a dark jacket, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low. But immediately, I noticed something unsettling. There was no food in his hands. No plastic bag, no box, nothing. Puzzled, I called through the door, asking him if he had my order. He hesitated for just a second, then explained that he had left the food in his car, claiming he had accidentally grabbed the wrong bag and wanted to confirm my order before bringing it to the door. His explanation felt strange. In all the times I had ordered food, no delivery driver had ever left it in their car first. It made no sense, and my instincts kicked in. Politely but firmly, I told him through the door that I would prefer he bring the food to the door before I opened it. He paused, clearly caught off guard by my request. He repeated that the food was in his vehicle and assured me it would only take a moment if I would simply open the door. His voice remained calm, yet a subtle urgency lingered beneath his words, heightening my suspicion. Feeling increasingly uneasy, I insisted again that he bring the food directly to the doorstep. After another short pause, he agreed, mumbling quietly, then turned away and walked back down the path toward the street. I watched through the peephole as he moved out of sight. After several minutes, it was clear he was not coming back. I felt relieved, though confused. Immediately, I called the restaurant to inquire about the strange interaction. When the manager answered, I explained the situation. He seemed confused, checking his records twice before assuring me my order had not even left the restaurant yet. My actual driver was still preparing to leave with my food. A chill of unease settled over me as I realized the man at my door had not been from the restaurant. Concerned, I called the non-emergency police number to report what had happened. The dispatcher took my information, promised the patrol would check the neighborhood, and advised me to remain vigilant. As I hung up the phone, I could feel my pulse quickening, anxiety settling in my stomach. Something was very wrong. I locked every window and checked each door carefully, double-checking the back entrance especially, ensuring everything was secure. After several tense minutes, I forced myself to calm down, rationalizing that the man had probably mistaken my house for someone else's. My genuine order arrived soon after, delivered by a friendly older gentleman whom I'd seen before. His reassuring presence made me feel better. I managed to eat my food in relative peace. About 20 minutes after the genuine delivery man left, however, I heard a faint noise coming from the rear of my house. It was subtle, a quiet scraping barely audible. But in the stillness of the house, the sound felt deafening. I froze in place, listening intently. Another soft scratching sound followed, more deliberate this time. I knew immediately what it was. The back door handle was being carefully tested. Panic surged through me, but I managed to keep calm enough to quietly move toward my phone and dial 911, whispering urgently to the dispatcher as the sounds of the back door persisted. Within minutes, the flashing lights of patrol cars illuminated the neighborhood, reflecting through my windows and casting eerie patterns along the walls. I watched anxiously as officers moved swiftly around my property, eventually knocking gently on my front door to let me know it was safe. They hadn't found the intruder, but there was clear evidence someone had tried forcing entry through my back door, leaving visible marks on the wood and lock. The police stayed to investigate, taking my statement and reviewing nearby security cameras for my neighbors. 2 days later, a detective contacted me, revealing disturbing news. The man at my door was not a delivery driver at all. Through camera footage from the neighborhood, investigators discovered he had parked an unmarked vehicle down the street, just out of sight. More shockingly, the detective explained they believe the man had obtained my address illegally by following me home from a grocery store I visited earlier that week. The investigators traced back to surveillance footage from that store and found the man loitering near my car in the parking lot, clearly observing my movements. Later, he was caught on camera, noting my license plate number. Detectives concluded he likely obtained my home address through an unauthorized contact who had access to confidential records, a chilling violation that made my stomach twist with fear and anger. The police assured me they would continue searching for the suspect and advised me on improving security measures around my home. For weeks afterward, I struggled with feelings of vulnerability, no longer feeling safe even within my own walls. I installed security cameras, added motion-activated lights, and reinforced every lock in my house. Months passed, and eventually, detectives informed me they had identified and arrested the man responsible. He had attempted similar acts of stalking and harassment elsewhere, using the same disturbing methods. Although he was in custody, my sense of safety was permanently shaken. Years have now passed since that terrifying night, but the fear has never completely left me. I've learned that danger can come quietly, disguised as something as simple and harmless as a late-night food delivery. To this day, I remain cautious, checking carefully before opening my door, always remembering the unsettling experience of that evening in Sacramento, when a seemingly ordinary night almost became a waking nightmare. Last week, I was sitting on my living room couch, flipping through channels, just trying to find something decent to watch. It had been a long day at work, and I just wanted to unwind. I glanced at my phone, 9:30 p.m. Perfect. Still early enough to catch a movie before bed. One of the titles that popped up was Home Alone, a classic I'd watched countless times since I was a kid. Nostalgia hit hard, and without thinking twice, I picked the channel. The familiar opening credits rolled, and I couldn't help but smile, instantly pulled back into my carefree childhood. I settled deeper into the couch, grabbed a nearby blanket, and got comfortable. As the movie played on, I laughed and relived every scene like it was the first time. Eventually, it reached the iconic moment where Harry and Marv begin breaking into the McAllister house. Watching Kevin outsmart the two burglars had always been hilarious. But just as Marv was creeping into the house with a crowbar, a loud crash erupted to my right. Startled, I jerked my head toward the noise, and my heart nearly stopped. The window next to me had shattered. Glass flew everywhere, covering the carpet and coffee table, sparkling under the glow of the TV. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to process what just happened. Standing there, in the broken window frame, was a tall figure dressed head to toe in black. His face was hidden behind a mask, but the anger radiating off him was unmistakable. Before I could react, I suddenly felt a hand, strong and cold, clamp around my neck from behind. There were two of them. Panic surged through me as the attacker behind me tightened his grip. I struggled to breathe, my limbs flailing in desperation. My mind was racing, faster than I'd ever thought possible. And then something clicked. A flashback from high school, a self-defense move I'd learned. With everything I had, I slammed my elbow backward into the chest of the person behind me. It worked. He staggered just enough for me to break free. I didn't hesitate. I jumped from the couch and ran. Barefoot, still in my pajamas and socks, I sprinted toward the front door. I unlocked it in a frenzy, yanked it open, and bolted into the night air. The street was quiet, dimly lit by street lamps that cast long, eerie shadows. Behind me, I heard fast footsteps. They were chasing me. Adrenaline kicked in full force. I ran harder, faster. Thank God I'd run track back in high school. Some muscle memory must have kicked in because I flew down the sidewalk like my life depended on it. Because it did. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My lungs burned, my heart felt like it was going to explode, but I didn't stop. After what felt like forever, I darted onto a side street and ducked behind a giant oak tree, pressing myself against the rough bark, trying to disappear. I held my breath. Everything was silent, except for the distant bark of a dog and the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. 20 tense minutes passed. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no movement. Eventually, I peeked out from behind the tree. The coast looked clear. Carefully, I crept back toward my house, every shadow and noise making me jump. The front door was still open. Inside, the TV was still playing, lighting up the mess of broken glass across the living room floor. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My voice shook as I explained what had happened. The dispatcher stayed calm and told me officers were on their way. About 10 minutes later, flashing red and blue lights painted the street. The officers moved quickly, checking every room. Nothing. The intruders had vanished. I gave them a full account of the incident. They took notes, snapped photos, and put up bright yellow "Do Not Cross" tape around the busted window. Before they left, they promised to increase patrols in the neighborhood and told me to call again if anything seemed off. That night, I didn't sleep. I tossed and turned, haunted by the feeling of being attacked in my own home. A place that once felt safe now felt violated. At sunrise, tired but determined, I called a window repair company. They showed up fast and had the window replaced within a few hours. Watching the new glass go and felt symbolic, like I was slowly taking back my peace. But I wasn't taking any chances. I started researching home security systems immediately. I ordered a high-end alarm system and a smart video doorbell camera. It wasn't cheap, but it was worth every penny. I'd always been careful with money, saving every bit I could since graduating college and starting my job. But this was the best use of my savings yet. Over the next few days, things began to feel sort of normal again. I got back into a routine, but I stayed alert. Every creak, every thump, every distant noise would still make my heart jump. The weirdest part? I kept thinking about that Home Alone scene. How surreal it was. How fiction had bled into reality that night. How I'd laughed just minutes before it all happened. It shook me in a way I didn't expect. Weeks later, things feel safer. The cameras are up. The alarm system's active. I'm more cautious now, more aware. But I'll never forget what happened. Because sometimes, even the most familiar places can become terrifying in an instant. I work for the Metro Nashville Police Department, Property Crimes Division. Most of my days are paperwork and follow-ups on burglaries. Nothing glamorous, but the habit of noticing small things sticks with you. So when my wife, Erin, and I finally closed on a little ranch-style house in Spring Hill, Tennessee, my brain kept switching between newlywed excitement and detective mode. We moved in on a humid Friday in late September. The neighborhood felt safe, dog walkers, yards full of college football flags, and a hardware store that still cut keys by hand. The sellers had already moved to Florida, so the place was empty except for the basic appliances they left behind. The second night, after stacking the last of our own boxes in the guest room, I decided to map out where smoke alarms and attic access panels were. Old habit. I climbed the pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling. One sweep with my flashlight and I froze. 13 cardboard boxes sat against the rafters, neatly tapered, each marked with a thick black marker. Lofton, Nigger. Larkspur Drive was 25 miles north, nowhere near our old apartment or the seller's forwarding address. Erin climbed halfway up the ladder and looked over my shoulder. "Did the movers mess up?" she asked. Maybe, but they inventoried everything we sent. Inside one box, I found knitted sweaters, the kind you see in antique shops. Another held framed photos of an elderly couple at Gatlinburg, the Smokies in the background. Nothing valuable enough for a thief to stash, but nothing that belonged in our attic. We wrote the phone number of the moving company on a sticky note and left the boxes alone. I closed the hatch, pulled the ladder up, and tried to forget about them long enough to enjoy our first full night in the house. My phone buzzed me awake. Motion alert from the cheap battery camera I had balanced on a kitchen counter until we installed it properly. The alert time read 2:17 a.m. Seconds later, we both heard it. Soft, deliberate steps above our bedroom ceiling. Old joys pop on their own, but these footfalls had weight and rhythm. Heel then toe, creaking down the length of the attic. Instinct threw me out of bed. I grabbed my off-duty Glock from the small safe in the nightstand, whispered for Aaron to stay put, and stepped into the hall. The attic ladder was still folded up, latch hooked. Whoever was up there hadn't come through this hatch. I called 911. Even though I was a detective, procedure mattered. I was inside jurisdiction, not responding to my call. While I waited, I checked every door and window. None forced, no glass shards, no muddy prints. The footsteps stopped after maybe 40 seconds, but left the silence 10 times heavier. The dispatcher kept me on the line until 2 Spring Hill Patrol units arrived. Lights off, just their spotlights sweeping the front yard. Officers Morales and Denton stood at the base of the attic ladder while I pulled it down. We went up together, me last, weapon low and ready. The 13 mystery boxes sat exactly where I'd found them, but their tops were sliced open now. Empty space yawned inside each. Whatever had been in them was gone. Further back, behind the chimney stack, we found a camping mattress, a battery lantern, and 3 empty water gallons. Next to them, several granola bar wrappers and 2 grocery bags labeled City Mission Pantry. Whoever lived there hadn't bothered to hide the setup well. They had tucked themselves in a corner, invisible from the ladder, hatch unless you crawled the length of the joist like we just had. The officers radioed for a K-9 unit, but the attic had only one practical exit, a square cutout on the far gable wall leading down to the garage framing. In the thin insulation dust under that cutout, I saw a single waffle pattern boot print pointing inward. The match to that print, pointing outward, was missing, meaning our squatter might still be in the walls or had dropped to the garage and slipped outside before we mobilized. Back on the ground floor, we started to canvass. One officer walked the perimeter. Another rapped on neighbors' doors, asking if anyone had seen a stranger. Meanwhile, I opened the boxes fully. At the bottom of one, I spotted a folded unemployment benefits letter. Mrs. Nora Lofton. The letter was 3 months old. I knew the address. A small brick house involved in a welfare check call last year after an elderly woman hadn't been seen for days. When officers entered, she was deceased of natural causes. No sign of her son, who neighbors said was in trouble. The son's name, Derek Lofton. Mid-30s. Small-time theft priors. Last known to couch surf around Williamson County. I relayed that to Morales. He punched it into the mobile terminal. Lofton had no current warrant, but had been cited for trespassing in August, caught sleeping in an abandoned farm shed outside Franklin. It dawned on me that the seller's disclosure mentioned a recent roof inspection. I dug through our closing paperwork and found the date. August 25th, about 5 weeks earlier. The inspector reported no anomalies. That meant Lofton moved in after the inspection, but before our closing walkthrough on September 19th. At minimum, he'd lived in our attic 2 weeks, probably longer. Listening to realtors show our future bedroom to prospective buyers, watching electricians swap out light fixtures, waiting for the perfect silence to rummage downstairs and eat. When the patrol sergeant arrived, we set up a perimeter search with thermal cameras. They found nothing by dawn. Whoever had stolen the attic life with surreptitious calm had melted away. Sunday afternoon, I drove to Franklin and spoke with a neighbor of Mrs. Lofton. She remembered Derek loading a pickup with boxes after the estate sale, but said he looked strung out and didn't speak. My guess, he moved the leftover personal items somewhere, maybe a storage shed, then hid them in our attic later, using them like a twisted memory blanket. I returned home and checked the crawl space door behind the garage water heater. The padlock the sellers left was intact, but fresh scratch marks ringed the hasp. A practice slip with a shim could open it. He might have come and gone that way many times, leaving no sign at the main doors. Aaron and I spent the next 2 days installing a real security system. Contact sensors, glass break detectors, and a wired attic camera aimed at the rafters. I added a deadbolt to the crawl space door and put motion lights under both eaves. On Wednesday, I received a call. Derek Lofton had been picked up in Columbia, 30 minutes south, after trying to pawn custom jewelry that matched an open burglary case. During processing, deputies found an SD card in his backpack. On it, time-stamped videos shot from an attic. Our attic. The file started 3 weeks before we closed. In them, our empty rooms are bathed in rental company staging lights. Then came clips of Aaron and me on the final walkthrough, talking excitedly about furniture placement, unaware of the lens peeking through a vent grill above us. The last video was dated the night the patrol units arrived. The camera jerks, heavy breathing, a flashlight beam flailing through insulation, then a sliver of night sky as he drops from the roof onto the back lawn and runs. Lofton took a plea on burglary charges unrelated to us, but the prosecutor added a stalking enhancement for the attic footage. He got 26 months in state prison. Small comfort, maybe, yet knowing exactly where he sleeps at night helps me breathe easier. Aaron laughs now when I triple-check the attic camera before bed, but we both know the laughter is a shield. Some evenings, while sealing evidence bags at work, I imagine the sound of soft tread above ceiling drywall and feel that thin layer of sheetrock between normal life and unseen threat. I worked dozens of break-ins, but nothing rattled me like finding someone else's world nested above mine, waiting. Owning a home always felt like an end goal, a permanent marker of safety. Turns out, walls are only wood and nails. Security is the vigilance you practice, not a feeling you inherit. If you ever buy an old Tennessee ranch with an easy-to-climb roofline, do yourself a favor. Sweep the attic thoroughly, change every lock, and set a camera watching the rafters. Because sometimes the very first housewarming gift you receive is a stranger at 2:17 a.m.